You know that part of yourself you try not to look at? The one that feels messy, complicated, embarrassing, or just really hard to face? That's your shadow. My new book, Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow, published by Wiser, is all about learning to see that part of yourself and realizing it's not something to eliminate or fear, but something to understand, because it often impacts all aspects of our life and our relationships without us even realizing it. My book blends psychology, tarot, and therapeutic self-reflection to help you move from shame to awareness and integration. Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow comes out December 8th, but it's available for pre-order now wherever books are sold. You are listening to The Tarot Diagnosis. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I also happen to have a love for tarot. Each episode, I invite you to reflect with me as I work to demystify the tarot and the human experience, all while exploring tarot's connection to mental and emotional health. While this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is not meant to take the place of psychotherapy. So grab your cards and join me as I work to create a pathway to better understand ourselves and those around us. I'm about to take you behind the scenes of my forthcoming book, Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow. I'm going to be reading some passages directly from the book and giving kind of a director's cut commentary experience, kind of like what was happening for me emotionally and mentally while I was writing the book, maybe what was kind of being stirred up within me, what surprised me. But before we get into all of that, I do want to share something that happened recently. So if you follow me on Instagram, then you saw my unboxing video of my author copies of Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow. But what you didn't see was what happened both before and after that video. And I want to share that with you today. So let me give you kind of a play-by-play leading up to the unboxing first. So I think it was a Sunday, and I had no idea the books were even being shipped to me yet. But I I had just got out of the shower, sat down on the couch, and I heard this like loud thump at the door. And so I checked my Ring camera, and it was UPS. And I wasn't expecting any sort of delivery. I hadn't ordered anything. And then it hit me. I immediately was like, holy shit, I think my books are here. And my partner leapt from the couch. I've never seen them like fly that quickly from the couch. So meanwhile, I am frozen in place. Like I cannot move. I feel like I'm having an out of body experience. And I'm like watching myself just like eyes wide staring at the door, like unable to move. So my partner runs to the door and just turns around and looks at me kind of like, are you just going to sit there? Are you going to come open the door? Is it okay if I get the box? Like what's happening here? And I'm just looking at them like, yeah, I am in fact just going to sit here. I was just petrified for some reason. So they open the door and see the box and then turn to me and they're just like beaming. I mean, practically jumping up and down. They're so excited. They grab the box, they walk back inside and say, oh my God, we have to record you opening the box. And then they look at me and they're like, but wait, you're not camera ready. And we both just start laughing. I am like crying with laughter because I was in fact not camera ready. I mean, like I said, I literally like just stepped out of the shower. My hair's soaking wet. I'm wearing this like ratty, oversized Led Zeppelin shirt that I sleep in. And I'm just like crying, laughing at both my level of frozenness and then their comment about me not being camera ready because I think like it easily could have been like misconstrued. But it was like, no, you're absolutely right. I'm not showing up like this. So fast forward, I put myself together and then we go into my office. And then of course, like my dog Barley. So if you follow me on Instagram, I post about him a lot. He is, oh my gosh, he's my baby. And he knows something's up. You know, he can feel the energy. So he's following me, trotting, so eager to see what's in the box. And, you know, we film me opening the box and he's just kind of like right there next to me the whole time, so excited. And what you see in that video, I mean, it was just like this one take. Like there's no, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? It's like, okay, we're opening the box. And I don't normally like film myself and do reels or anything. So that was a little outside of my comfort zone. But I did kind of want that moment to look back on, down the road. So yeah, we film this like unboxing, and you get to see that kind of real, raw, vulnerable moment with me. And actually, speaking of vulnerability, after we recorded that, you see me kind of like flip through the book for a second, and I put the book back in the box, and then I just kind of like put the box in my closet. I eventually took it back out to take some photos, but I did not open the book for several days. And I was reflecting on this level of like resistance, like what is wrong with me? And, I realized there's just something so deeply intimate. And like the word that kept coming up for me was like confrontational, about putting your thoughts, your ideas, and your research into book format with the sole purpose of it being seen and held by strangers. I think on one hand, of course, yes, absolutely exciting. But on the other hand, for me, it was also incredibly terrifying, because writing is basically saying, here's the inside of my mind. Please be gentle, because I'm showing you and sharing such an intimate part of myself with you. And opening those author copies was like opening a door that I could not close again. And I mean, even just like acknowledging that makes me feel a little sick. I recognize this feeling though. There's this like tension that exists between, and I see this so much with my clients who are artists, and just my friends and family, and just like loved ones who are also artists. This like tension between longing to be seen and like wanting to hide. So there's this saying like, look at me, but don't look at me. It's this kind of like internal and honestly like external, depending on how it's showing up, like tug of war between allowing yourself to be exposed and craving the safety of isolation. The whole experience of this really reminds me of the philosophy of Sartre, who talked about the moment we feel ourselves become an object in someone else's like eyes or perception, and how that moment creates a new level of self-consciousness in us, because we're suddenly aware of how our own authenticity and our own transparency can be dangerous. And I think that's kind of what was happening, like writing this book and then like receiving the author copies. You realize it's this act of radical transparency. You're taking your internal world, your ideas, your stories, your own shadows, your own projections, and turning them into an object that can be picked up, held, judged, interpreted, misinterpreted, loved, hated, debated. And you don't get to control who sees what or what they take from it or the parts they decide to project onto it. So yeah, I all of that was like swirling at me all at once, sitting there, wet hair, ratty t-shirt, staring at this box that represented all of that to me. So it makes perfect sense that I couldn't really like dive in and open the book, because all of that fear and anxiety and resistance just came kind of hurling at me, and really just like created this barrier between me and the box. So, and it is interesting because like, obviously I explore these types of experiences all day, every day with clients. So from a psychological standpoint, I understand that holding the physical copy of the book was like a mirror. And much like tarot acts as a mirror. That's why it's so powerful. We get to see all of these experiences, emotions, thoughts, ideas reflected back to us that maybe we otherwise wouldn't have been able to see. And I think receiving the author copies, holding the book, opening the book, really just kind of reflected back every unconscious and conscious, really, question that I was carrying. Like, will people misunderstand me? Will they see too much? Will they see too little? Did I not share enough? Did I not explore enough? What if I miss something important? What if what if I don't make sense? What if they hate it? What if it all sounds stupid? What if I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about? Everyone will see that I'm an imposter. All of those thoughts that I know I'm not alone in. None of these anxieties and fears that I'm talking about right now are unique. Like I sit with people every day. I talk to you all who engage in this content with me, who also express kind of varying degrees of these questions, all related to different aspects of life. So, and I understand that it's it's not unique and it's a relatively normal experience. And I also acknowledge and realize both now and throughout the process that writing this book meant making contact and highlighting the parts of me that crave to be understood, that crave to be seen, as well as the parts of me that assume I won't be understood or I won't be seen, or the parts that maybe feel like I don't deserve any of it. And I mean, it's interesting because it's all an aspect of shadow work. And, you just like this book, for example, I think I'm writing a book about the shadow, and then the book itself becomes one big exercise in shadow work for me. Okay, so now that I've kind of rambled about the emotional chaos of receiving my author copies, I do want to share some more of the book with you. I know the last episode, I read a bit of a chapter for you, and I want to be a little bit more flexible with this episode. I'm going to read a few sections from Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow, and again, like share some of my behind the scenes thoughts that I had while writing it, and even anything that comes up for me right now. Maybe moments of doubt, things maybe I would have said differently. Maybe parts that felt too honest or parts that surprised me. So, I hope that this episode just feels like you're kind of hanging out with me and we're going through the book together, coffee in hand, or in this case, tea. I have my herbal tea with me and having fun exploring, because I think it's important to remember too that shadow work isn't just the content of this book. And in fact, I specifically mentioned that in the beginning, how shadow work isn't just reading one book, attending one workshop, doing one or two journal prompts, or one tarot spread. It really is an entire process. Also, shout out to my audio engineer, who's the tech brains behind making sure this podcast sounds good and is able to go out to all of you. Anthony, this episode was actually his idea. I wasn't originally going to do this, and he suggested it. So, I think it'll be fun. And as an exposure exercise for myself, I had a couple options. I could have easily just read from a PDF, my own like kind of digital PDF copy of the book on my screen, which is what I did during the last episode. But I'm going to do some exposure therapy, and I'm going to hold the physical book and read directly from that. And I don't have anything planned. This is all just kind of like, I'm just going to flip through, and whatever catches my eye, that's what I'm going to read. So let's just dive in. All right, let's see what I can flip to first. That looks interesting. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, this was a fun section. So, magical tools for shadow work. So, I did not know, this is some behind the scenes tea for you all. I did not at first consider including this section in the book. So, my publisher, Wiser, recommended having a section like this in the book. So magical tools that can be used in shadow work. And it was really interesting. This is where I felt maybe a little bit like an imposter, because a lot of you who know my work know that a lot of my kind of witchcraft adjacent or personal rituals is so rooted in psychodrama and the like therapy experience behind that. And I wanted to make sure that I explored this section from a lens that felt like respectful of people who use certain tools in ways that are different than the way I use them. And it was actually really great writing this section because I was reminiscing about before I moved to Arizona and I had my in-person practice in Tampa. And I share in the book, which I'll read in a second, a lot of different kind of crystals and just like magical tools around my office that clients would naturally gravitate towards. And so it was really nice reminiscing about those times and kind of labeling them for what they were, especially as I wrote this section in the book. And this section is called Magical Tools for Shadow Work. It starts on page 89 that I'm reading from. Before my therapy practice went completely virtual, I had the office of my dreams. It was a large 4-office suite with a lobby, kitchenette, and bathroom. I had an end unit, so there were floor-to-ceiling windows from the lobby all the way down one whole side of the building. The windows looked out to a lush courtyard with 100-year-old oak trees, wild snake plants, and blooming birds of paradise. It was magical. Inside my office was no different. I always wanted my clients to feel like they were stepping into a calm, safe space. I wanted their nervous systems to regulate just by walking through the front door. So I had lots of warm lighting, relaxing music, water features, salt rock lamps, and plenty of crystals. I have always loved crystals, but I never realized how surprisingly important they would become to my therapy practice. In the room where I saw clients, there were 2 side tables and a bookshelf that held a collection of my favorite therapy books alongside a plethora of crystals, stones, and other objects for folks to fidget with if they needed to. I made it a point to tell each client that they were welcome to grab anything in my office they felt drawn to or needed to hold at any point during our work together. I kept a clear quartz point on a side table along with a few tumbled stones like amethyst, sodalite, rose quartz, and aventurine. Without fail, everyone gravitated toward the clear crystal point. Clients would even grab it as soon as they walked into the office, letting it balance between their fingers or turn it around in their hands, staring at it deeply as they shared their stories with me. Often, I would gravitate toward it too. In between clients, I would find myself needing to ground and regulate my own nervous system. I had a few different interventions I would cycle through: lavender and sage room spray, diaphragmatic breathing, a few minutes of a yoga pose, a walk around the block, or a few stretches. However, more often than not, I was reaching for that clear quartz point. I loved how cold it felt in my hands. I would often hold it against my chest while I took several deep breaths, especially if I was having a particularly emotional day. There was something so special about this stone. Fast forward a few years, and my practice is now completely virtual. I, of course, kept the majority of my office decor, especially my stones. I keep them on my desk now so I can see them during sessions. I don't reach for them as often as I used to, but when I need them, they are there. In fact, recently, during my own personal therapy, that clear crystal point became the central focus. My schedule was slammed, so I had to switch my appointment with my own therapist to a virtual session at the last minute. I had a lot of significant life changes happening at the time, and I knew there would be a lot of crying during this session. Not even 5 minutes into the appointment, and I already had a fistful of tissues at the ready. My therapist is rooted in somatic-based practices, so she immediately helped me ground and regulate my nervous system. First, she asked me to look around the room and locate an object that might calm me. I immediately spotted the clear quartz point. As I held the quartz and rolled it between my fingers, my therapist immediately noticed my breathing had slowed down. She asked me what was happening for me at that moment, and I recalled several times that my clients held the same crystal in their hands, noticing its cool temperature, zooming in on the imperfections in the stone, and running their fingertips over the pointed edge. My eyes welled up again, but this time with gratitude and love for the clients who allowed me to hold space for them when they were in the same type of moment I was in now with my own therapist. Before I knew it, 10 minutes of me staring into the stone had gone by. My breathing was now slow and steady. My thoughts were clearer, and I was ready and able to talk about what was going on. I eventually set the stone down, but kept it in front of me for the remainder of the session. Not only can the use of crystals and stones act as a calming tool during the shadow work process, but they can also provide additional insight into the work you're doing. Paying attention to the types of stones and magical tools you are gravitating towards can help paint a picture of what is happening in the subconscious. All right, so I remember that therapy session very vividly. Honestly, throughout writing this book, I had a lot of significant changes happening in my life. I was going through probably the most emotionally confusing time of my life. And so kind of ironic that it was during the creation of this book, but it was really nice to, again, like I mentioned earlier, reminisce on that particular stone because, and it's sitting right in front of me right now. I'm holding it as I speak. It's It sits right in front of my computer, and I can remember so many sessions with my own clients who held the stone and allowed it to be a grounding presence for them while they explored some of the most difficult and painful moments of their own life. So the stone is really special, and I should probably take a picture of it and post it so you all can see what I'm talking about. I'll be sure to include it in the show notes. All right, let's flip through again and find another passage to read. Okay, here we go. So I'm kind of working backwards here. So this section is called the persona. It's on page 63. Another important aspect of the psyche that is important to understand as it relates to the shadow is the concept of the persona. The persona represents the social mask we wear to adhere to societal expectations. It is a source of protection, acting as our unique approach to navigating and responding to the world around us. While essential for navigating daily life, the persona often obscures the hidden aspects of the self, such as the shadow, by repressing qualities that may not align with an acceptable social image. We can extend this concept further by examining how art and archetypes help us identify our persona and explore its impact in shadow work. At the onset of my career, I worked extensively with children and families affected by trauma. One of the most impactful interventions I used with children was rooted in art therapy, specifically the creation of masks. These children, having endured unspeakable violence and profound emotional distress, often struggled to find the words to describe their inner pain. They were trapped in a space where their external and internal realities were at odds, lacking the language to bridge the gap between what they felt, what they had experienced, and what they expressed. Art became an essential tool in facilitating this connection. Mask making in particular served as a non-threatening and accessible medium that allowed children to explore their emotional landscapes. In its simplest form, I would provide my young clients with a sheet of paper, asking them to depict an outside mask on one side, representing how they presented themselves to the world. On the reverse side, they would draw or write what this external mask concealed: their hidden emotions, fears, worries, and internal experiences. This exercise offered them a tangible way to access and understand their emotions, bridging the dissonance between their inner and outer worlds. I expanded this exercise for older kids and teenagers, incorporating actual masks and a variety of mixed media materials, transforming it into a more immersive and symbolic process. This progression from simple sketches to intricate mask making deepened the therapeutic experience, allowing my clients to articulate complex emotions they had previously been unable to express. I share this experience because the therapeutic intervention of mask making mirrors the concept of the persona as theorized by Jung. We have to be careful to not over-identify with our persona, as doing so can disconnect us from our core self and create emotional distance in personal relationships. When we become too rigidly attached to the social mask we wear in public, it can become difficult to shift between our public and private selves. If this concept sounds familiar, it's because as a society, our social media personalities function similarly to the concept of the persona. It can be incredibly difficult to separate our social media persona from our core self. In tarot, this dynamic can be illustrated through the Queen of Swords. Often depicted as sharp, critical, and well-boundaried, this archetype serves as a valuable purpose in protecting our emotions and vulnerabilities in the outside world. However, when someone over-identifies with the Queen of Swords persona, they may struggle to drop the sword in their personal life, keeping their loved ones at a distance. This inability to reveal a softer, more vulnerable side can inhibit the formation of deep and meaningful connections with partners, children, friends, and family. In this way, over-identification with a persona restricts emotional intimacy and personal growth. So some of you may know, and this isn't part of the book, this is me now processing what we just read. Some of you may know that the Queen of Swords is probably my favorite archetype in the tarot, and analyze that as you will. In fact, a good friend of mine even gifted me a beautiful poster of the Queen of Swords, which is proudly hanging in my living room right now. And I think because I understand that I can easily over-identify with being too boundaried, too rigid, not letting people in. And this is definitely an aspect of myself that I'm constantly having to work on, of like wanting closeness and also not wanting it for fear of getting hurt for a multitude of reasons. So for me, when I was writing this, I absolutely was thinking of both my own personal experiences and clients that I've worked with over the years, and even just like people in my personal life who I understand can absolutely exhibit patterns of over-identification with a persona to the point where they are not able to allow themselves to be fully seen emotionally, and how detrimental that can be to the quality of their life. Okay, let's flip through and find another passage to read real quick. Oh, yeah, let's do this. So, in the book, I go through the major arcana and explore the major arcana as both dark shadows and golden shadows. So, you'll find a page dedicated to each of the major arcana. And then I also do some light exploration of the suits as well. So, I just flipped to the Emperor and the Hierophant. So, let's explore the Emperor. And this is page 112. The shadow of the emperor is tyrannical and self-absorbed. They need power and control and are willing to do whatever is needed to obtain it. This shadow often stems from a deep fear of vulnerability or unpredictability, which drives the emperor to build a rigid boundary of control that isolates them from true connection and collaboration with others. The golden shadow of the emperor is assertive and seeks stability for themselves and others. They find value in order and predictability and structure without demanding it from others, instead seeking guidance and inviting suggestions from others. If the shadow of the emperor is authoritarian, then the golden shadow is authoritative. Also, as I'm reading this, I use the word others way too many times. This is why I don't want to reread the book, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have edited that better. But anyway, I digress. So, included with each description of the dark shadow and golden shadow of the major arcana, I also have questions to reflect on. And in these questions, you can journal, just think about them yourself, or if you want, you can pull cards to them. And for every major arcana, the first two questions relate to the darker shadow, and then the last two questions relate to the golden shadow. So these questions are: in what areas of your life do you find yourself needing to exert excessive control or dominance? What fears or insecurities might be driving this need for power? How does having a clear sense of order, structure, and predictability benefit you and those around you? How can you ensure that your leadership is rooted in mutual respect and care? All right, let's explore the Hierophant now. So this is the next page, page 113. The shadow of the Hierophant can be judgmental and intolerant of others who have different thoughts, beliefs, customs, or ways of living. This may result in a dogmatic attitude in which opposing ideas are viewed as dangerous or wrong. This shadow may develop from experiencing environments where conformity was necessary for safety and belonging. As a golden shadow, the Hierophant shows respect for the paths others take that are different from their own. Rather than being critical, the Hierophant has the ability to guide others with compassion, curiosity, and a sincere intention to assist them in discovering their own personal truths. And the reflection questions are: when have you been judgmental or intolerant of others' beliefs or practices? How do you typically react when confronted with ideas or customs that challenge your own? How can you create a space for others to find their own truth rather than imposing your ideas onto them? What practices can help you stay grounded while embracing diversity of thought and belief? Exploring both the dark shadows and golden shadows of the major arcana was challenging in many ways, because I found myself in my head saying a lot, well, will other people agree with this? Is this what, is actually accurate? And I had to keep reminding myself that, and I actually wrote a portion. There's a section in the book. I'm not exactly sure where it is. I think it's in the very beginning of the major arcana. I state that I'm writing these interpretations based on how I feel about the cards at this moment. And I think that's important to remember across the board. And it's actually something that comes up a lot in the book club inside the symposium with the tarot diagnosis, when we're having our monthly get-togethers where we are exploring a particular tarot book and author. The one theme that continues to arise is this question of, what was the author experiencing or going through or thinking about when they wrote this? Because we can see or sense really often that the author was probably having a certain viewpoint or experiencing something in their life based on how they're viewing the cards. So I think that's important to remember across the board based on anything you're reading from anybody. And so I was trying to keep that in mind for myself a lot too, where I was constantly kind of like walking this kind of line between being aware of my own projections and also wanting to make sure that I was providing at least kind of an overview of the card from all facets and not just what I was experiencing in my own life. So that's kind of like what was happening for me personally. All right, let's explore one more section, maybe towards the back, because I did the front a lot. Oh, here we go. Let's explore shadow integration in action. And this is page 148. So before I share this passage, throughout this book, I give a lot of therapeutic and clinical examples of shadow work in therapy. I think it's important to note, and of course, this is in the front of the book as well, none of these examples are verbatim of what happened. So just to protect confidentiality, everything has been altered or changed, or I have taken kind of like a general overview of what was happening with clients, multiple clients, and created kind of an entirely different case based on maybe like 5 different cases. So keep that in mind when you're reading this. So this section is shadow integration in action. I was working with a client who was experiencing significant difficulties in their relationship with their father. They frequently referred to him as, quote, a gigantic narcissist, and expressed that he was solely concerned with his own needs. Week after week, they would enter my office visibly frustrated, sit down with an exasperated sigh, and exclaim, wait until you hear what he did this week. They repeatedly identified behaviors such as interruption, lack of social awareness, inability to empathize, and an apparent disinterest in their life as central sources of their frustration. According to the client, their father only seemed interested in engaging with them when the conversation revolved around him. Over several weeks, we processed their emotions and intense reactivity towards their father. Then in one session, I decided to take a different approach, and I asked them to consider instances where they might have exhibited similar behaviors as their father. Initially, they scoffed at the suggestion, and I feared it might have caused a rupture in our therapeutic relationship. However, after a prolonged silence, they quietly uttered 2 words: middle school. Their arms were crossed, and it was clear they were uncomfortable. Sensing the importance of the moment, I gently encouraged them to elaborate. The client then recounted painful memories from their childhood when they were bullied and ostracized for behavior such as interrupting their peers, habitually responding with, quote, me too, and neglecting to show genuine interest in others, instead expecting their peers to listen to their exuberance over their latest hobby. The client said they felt they had to hide their interests and that talking about themselves was, quote, bad. Eventually, we began exploring how these early experiences might have contributed to the development of a shadow, which was now being triggered by their father, resulting in their own projection. The client's reactivity to their father's behavior was the client's way of putting more distance and space between themselves and the behaviors they felt ashamed of as a child and still now as an adult. Over time, the client gained greater insight into themselves, their neurodiversities, and the aspects of their personality that they had repressed because of those painful middle school experiences. This newfound awareness allowed them to develop a degree of empathy for their father. Their frustration regarding his lack of social skills and awareness decreased, and they became less reactive. This shift had a cascading effect, leading to a noticeable reduction in their overall anxiety and tension related to their father. While they continued to feel dissatisfied with the lack of reciprocal communication in their relationship, we were able to address additional ways to cope with this in subsequent sessions. The key takeaway is that by recognizing and integrating the shadow, the client achieved a deeper sense of self-awareness and contentment. They no longer felt controlled by the actions, or lack thereof, of their father. So this was a really, I think, great lens into the therapy room and how shadows can show up with your therapist and how shadows can show up through the form of repression in terms of neurodiversity or sexuality and creativity. And this was another example that I've seen quite a bit of. So that particular case study was probably a combination of 3 or 4 different experiences over years that I'd had. And I think it shows how we don't eliminate a shadow. We don't get rid of it. It's not quote unquote healed. It's learning how to understand when it emerges, what it means for you, how it's impacting the way that you interact with other people, and how that is affecting you on an emotional level, and whether or not that's contributing to the quality of your life or taking away, and then finding ways to change how you respond so that you feel better. So that was our kind of behind the scenes director's cut commentary experience of Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow. My hope is that this book allows you all to understand the deeper roots of the shadow, what shadow work truly is, and how you can incorporate your own kind of witchy spiritual practices in the mix while also staying rooted in the science and psychology of it all. Thank you so much for listening to The Tarot Diagnosis. For more tarot and mental health content, follow The Tarot Diagnosis on Instagram. You can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode and sign up to receive the Tarot Diagnosis emails where you'll have access to exclusive spreads and exciting announcements. To join an incredible community of tarot and psychology enthusiasts, join the Tarot Diagnosis membership community, The Symposium, by visiting thetarotdiagnosis.com.